Hey, man, it's a hump day edition. It's the 92.9 The Game Christmas party edition of Dukes and Bell with our man, Mike Johnson, who has already got his 2 drink tickets, and we can't wait to let our hair down today. That'll be going on after the show, but we've got some big stuff for you. If you missed it, Raheem Morris, our conversation yesterday where, look, we get down to it again, special teams, his relationship, what's he saying with Arthur Blank, and you'll also hear Dave Archer. We had a really cool conversation with Arch about the offense and what's not working and why it isn't working. And one of our favorite Falcons yesterday, Mike, I love talking with Matthew Bergeron. And if nothing else, join us for the Formula One conversation and also talking about the Hawks with a guy that I think maybe not in America, maybe he does it in Canada, maybe he does it in America, but a guy who definitely has a future in the media after his playing days are over with the Falcons. So that's all coming up today on Dukes and Bell. Also, we're going to talk to Greg Allman. That's A-U-M-A-N from Fox Sports covering the NFL. Not Greg Allman. That would really be something if we could resurrect him. So that's what's all coming down today on 92.9 The Game. So yesterday, we'll dive right in. Day brought something up, and I know that, Mike, you talked about this on a podcast with Mark Zinno a few weeks back. And that is, and Day got into this before I even went to Germany for the Berlin game. Day goes, Raheem has kind of got like this peace. And I said, like a Zen-like state of peace. And Day goes, is there any other kind? And that brought us up to, would Arthur Blank bring Raheem Morris back in 2026? And Mike, why would Arthur Blank do that? Make the case for that if you can.
Well, I unfortunately, I think it has less to do with Raheem and more about kind of everything else going on around it. I mean, I think that we don't think of Raheem as this great coach right now, and I think there's a lot of moving pieces around that. But you also are dealing with a wide receiver core that I think even the biggest fans would argue is devoid of talent without Drake London, right? You haven't been given the pieces. I think you the Michael Penix thing has kind of fallen off the rails. Raheem has shown the ability that when he went out and hired Jeff Ulbrich, the kind of the second choice as defensive coordinator in the second round this year, has come in and made some good changes. I also, and this is where I came from when I talked to Mark Zinno about this, I do get fearful. We talk about spending $180 million on Kirk Cousins and a first-round pick on Michael Penix. We also spent a lot of draft capital last year on the pass rush and on the defense, and you have to make sure all those guys continue to be developed under Jeff Ulbrich. And if Jeff Ulbrich walks out of the door, are we right back to square one where we were a couple of years ago when we couldn't pay for 6 sacks a season out of anybody on this defense? So I don't know. I was really on board with this a couple weeks ago when I talked to Zinno. I've started falling way further off the board when I look at the 28-point result that we saw on Sunday against a good Seahawks team. But I also have to point out some of the things that I don't know who out there is going to sign up for a job like this. I think you might be right back in the same situation. And just from a 30,000-foot view, and you guys have been around this a long time, you can tell me how you feel about this, but I hate the thought of continuing to just replace coaches. And I don't know that Raheem's the guy. This is not me saying he should be back, but I do think that at some point the vision for the football team all the way from the top down has got to start lining up. And when you keep replacing guys and you bring in Arthur Smith and he gets rid of Matt Ryan and he drafts Desmond Ridder and you go with a light offensive line and you run wide zone and then you bring in a guy who doesn't know how to run wide zone. It's Frankenstein. It's all over the place. Right. And so I don't know that Raheem's the guy, but I could see them in a scenario where they look at Raheem and go, you know what, man, one more year. Let's try to figure out the quarterback thing, although it's not going to happen next year. And move on from there. So we'll see what happens.
That's a hard. So real quick, I want to get your takes. And Day, just real quick, just to rebuttal. I think that in the 5-game losing streak and in the first 2 months of the season, Raheem Morris and his coaching staff did enough before the injuries kicked in to show you they weren't up to the task. And I think that the total package we talked about is, yes, things that are beyond his control. The kicking game, general manager never got a kicker. And that's going to cost you some games. But then there are the things you did have control over. Bringing in Jimmy Lake last year, correction with Ulbrich, you pointed that out. You mentioned it. Zac Robinson does not know how to involve the run game with the pass game. He cannot integrate the two, and none of it makes sense. He's also not the guy to work with Michael Penix Jr. if and when he comes back. So that's just my 2 cents. I think there's enough, and I agree. You don't want to become a Mickey Mouse franchise, but when you don't go to the playoffs for 8 years, Mike, I think you have to rip the Band-Aid off, admit you made a mistake, and just hope that you get it right. And let's be honest, guys, the coaching carousel, at best odds, it's a 20% chance of getting it right. Day, Oren?
I think to Mike's point, last night, Chris, he did a show, and his topic of conversation was, did we kind of overhype what the talent level was for this Falcons team at the beginning of the season? And I think if you answer yes to that question, then there's a very good chance Raheem comes back. Because to Raheem's point, he can go to Arthur and say, hey, I swapped out my DC. We got rid of Jimmy Lake. You got somebody competent in here, and then look what happened.
Yeah, but you blew it on offense. But you blew it.
Competent people around me in terms of coaching staff and coach talent on the field, then I will be able to produce. But it's going to be a matter of Arthur Blank either believing that, hey, I put talent around you and you failed, or Fontenot and I did not put the right talent around you, and if we can do that, maybe you'll succeed. So
what does Arthur say about special teams, though? I mean, that cost you 4 games this year.
The same thing, too. If we find a competent special teams coach, will this get turned around? Like, I think
why didn't Arthur Blank? I'm sorry to cut you off, but why didn't you fix it? Why wasn't it remedied midseason?
And that's a fair question too. But I think there's a buck to be passed, and I don't know if Raheem necessarily could word it that way, but I don't know if Raheem comes in and takes necessarily all the blame for everything that went wrong this year. To say like, hey, I didn't have what I needed to succeed, and if you give me what I need to succeed, maybe this thing looks a whole lot different for one more year.
And look, before we get Day, let me just give a rebuttal to that as well, because I think you do have to point out that Marquise Williams' units last year were way better than they are right now, right? It was the kicking. Yes, the kicker stunk. But we've talked about a ton of times just yesterday. Kadero Hodge went to the Pro Bowl. You had D'Angelo Malone, incredible. You've had good coverage units for the most part when Marquise Williams has been here. It's just completely fallen off the rails, over the last couple of weeks and really throughout the season. You talk about last year not fixing it to this year. It was really just the kicker. I mean, you brought in Jamal Agnew. That experiment's failed. So you got to get that off the rails as well. But, and I know Day-Day's got thoughts too.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, I think the key is going to be the conversations that Raheem Morris, and maybe even if Terry Fontenot's in these conversations that he's having with Arthur Blank, is how transparent is he with, assuming shouldering some blame for some things and pointing out, where they may have messed up when it comes in terms of personnel, whether it's coaching or player. And I say all that because, earlier this week when he was asked about the support of Arthur Blank, he said, he knows he's 100% in support of him. And goes on to talk about how outstanding he is. It's everybody on deck. He's, 100% awesome, this, that, and third, all of that. So going back to my original statement from weeks ago about him having that calm, whatever the conversations is, it just feels like Raheem Morris is come to terms. He's cool. He's okay with whatever this situation is going to result in terms of whether he comes back as a coach or not. To you guys' points about things being around him, to succeed, bringing in a new coach, if the things aren't there for Ra to succeed, bringing in a new coach for next year, knowing that Michael Penix Jr. may not be available to start the season, what are you doing with your OC? Is that coach going to be in a position to succeed?
Mike,
why not bring Rob back and just see what he can do at least for next year?
Right. And Mike, I want to ask a follow-up question. You and all three of you guys, honestly, I'd love to have an answer to this. This is something I've kicked around as well. If you are going to make the decision to bring Raheem back, do you think it satisfies any portion of the fan base if you say, okay, Raheem's coming back, but we're going to get rid of Terry Fontenot? To Oren brings up a good point about Turtle's conversation last night, talking about did we overrate the talent on this team? Well, if that's true, is that Terry Fontenot's fault? And do you think that people will look at it and go, hey, I got my pound of flesh getting rid of Terry Fontenot. I'll give Raheem one more year and see what happens?
I think there's more of a connection with the fan base with the coach on the sideline than the general manager. And we don't even see Terry. We don't hear him during the regular season. It's like, he's up in the tower like freaking Rapunzel. I don't know what that's about, but that's how the organization handles it. But no, I just think you can't sell that to the fan base. Coming back from Germany, from Berlin, in the airport in Frankfurt, talking about 50 season ticket holders, and everybody's on the fence. Like, why am I doing this? I might not come back next year. You got to have some changes. I just think there's too many fundamental problems with this thing and how you approach it. Now, it is the general manager's fault. You did the stupidest thing in the history of the pro sport, which was to do Kirk Cousins and to draft a guy with an injury history. I mean, that was just colossal, and none of the redundancy has worked. As a matter of fact, neither one has shown the ability. But to the point about last year, you were 6-3. The talent was good enough to be 6-3 before we even made the improvements on defense. But there are some other issues. You had to go get Divine Diablo because Troy Anderson's a bust. And that's why you had to bring him in. Now, he was a revelation, and we love Divine Diablo. But There's just too many things that don't fly. The one for me with free agents is Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney is the same guy we said this yesterday. He was in Chicago. Now, that's not on Raheem Morris. That is on the general manager. If you want to start to spread, that's why I say, in the words of Vince McMahon, you're fired. Everybody goes. Clean slate. But here's the worst part, guys. Rich McKay will still be a part of the process. So people watching our podcast right now or listening to the show go, nothing will change. Mike, the constant in the equation will still be there.
Yeah,
and that's Arthur's guy.
I have no argument against that. And I think that Arthur's got to take a long look at everybody that's involved in this equation. We talk about the hiring process and the committee and the panel of 10 people and an independent group that came in, and they were 3 of them and all this other stuff. And in the end, it does feel like a Rich McKay thing. It feels like, Rich McKay involved in this process for the most part. And Rich McKay can talk about Atlanta United all he wants to and whatever role he's playing. We know the deal, right? Rich McKay's got the ear of Arthur Blank, and I think that's something that's a bridge that Arthur Blank, I think over the next 4 games plus, that's something he's going to have to talk about, with himself, maybe even with Josh, the son, that's obviously due to take over this team at some point. Right. So I don't know the right answer, man. I have no bones about anybody who wants to call for Rich McKay. Bye, because I don't know. I don't think Rich McKay has anything to do with this franchise other than making decisions about the head coach and telling Arthur Blank what he thinks about the current team. And okay, bye, see you. If that's what you want to do, I'll see you later.
I just think, Mike, their relationship is so tight. He's the sounding board. And that's what I'm saying. Like when you're looking for, Arthur Blank, the guy he's going to lean on as some of these big decisions. I just think Rich is not a guy that Arthur's going to make these decisions without at least getting input. And unfortunately, some of the biggest decisions that affect the franchise. Orrin?
The worst thing you can give, I think, at this point, Raheem, and it's going to sound really bad, is hope. And these last 4 games can do a whole lot to give himself and Arthur Blank a lot of hope. Say these Falcons go 3-1, or let's say you go 2-2 and you're highly competitive in those 2 losses. Say that Rams loss is a last-second field goal by LA. The worst thing I think you can do in this situation is when you have a guy who's on the ropes like Raheem is right now. And I'll even describe him as this. He's kind of a lame duck right now. He's just kind of sitting out there, don't know exactly what that future may be. When you got a lame duck coach like that in those last 4 games, all he can do at this point is just help himself. There isn't a worse level I think he can get to right now if the inevitability is simply to be fired.
But again, you've lost 7 of your last 8, including losses to the Jets and the Saints. I mean, there's nothing, if I own this team, that this coaching staff could do to win me back. Done.
It's Arthur, though. It's Arthur.
But that's right. But I mean, well, then then we're in worse shape than I thought we were because Arthur's freaking delusional because the fan base is over it. You know what I mean?
But it goes back to Raheem feeling confident that he's got 100% support from Arthur Blank. If he feels that way, then that to me signals that he knows the future, his future with this franchise, and it may be the fact that look. Things went off the rail in all different fashions, and then you lose your quarterback. I'm going to bring you back and see if you can fix this.
And Mike, I look, man, you've been a fan for this franchise longer than I've been kicking around this town. I'll be the first to admit I'm an adopted Falcons guy. I came here when I got drafted, right? And I've kind of latched on after that. But in my opinion, and maybe fans in the comment section will completely disagree with this, in my opinion, specifically for this franchise, all it takes is to go out and win games. Like, you can talk about jumping off the ship. You can talk about not believing. If Raheem Morris wins a couple games on the stretch and they do retain him and he starts the season 3-0 next year, guess what? That thing will start filling back up again. That's just the nature of the beast when it comes to this city and when it comes to the Benz. I mean, and I want to get y'all's take real quick before we have to jump off here, and obviously we'll have the show to talk this afternoon. I was watching CBS HQ earlier, and they're talking about the Falcons drafting a quarterback. Would you guys waste a draft pick on a quarterback that's going to start the first 4 games of the year and maybe be a fallback plan, a developmental guy, be it maybe a 3rd-round pick?
Well, I mean, right now I need wide receiver 2. I got to get Mooney. I got to cut Mooney and take that one in the shorts. I got to get another, like Hughes had a good day, had the pick, but I got to get a more athletic, younger corner opposite A.J. Troy. Just off the top of my head.
You need some dumpers on that defensive line.
Yeah, and I got to get some D tackles, Mike.
Got to get a nose guard. Got to get a true 2-gap nose guard. I know we don't 2-gap in our scheme. Got to get a true Eddie Goldman back in here.
Right. We got to go find Grady Jackson. We got to go see where Grady Jackson is. Got to walk into a Piccadilly cafeteria, get him back. But no, real quick, Mike mentioned it. We'll also get into in the 3rd hour of the program today. What's up with the Bravos? I get it. They brought Iglesias back. Technically, that is a move. They made a move for a guy named Ryan Rollison. Okay. They did pick up a utility infielder who's sort of an insurance policy for Ozzie Albies and Mauricio Dubon. But Mike brought this up yesterday. We still need a shortstop that can hit his weight, and that's something that we haven't been able to find. And the Braves, the good news is the pitching market has not really done anything yet. Schwarber got his deal. Diaz, for whatever reason, the Mets let him go to the Dodgers. But the starting pitching. But the problem is we don't talk to Scott Boras. So any of those guys are kind of off the board anyway. But maybe in the winter meetings, we're not hearing any big pitching signings. So what do you guys think? Maybe we'll be able to get something with a Groupon. There can't be a Boras guy, but it'll be some innings eaters, and then something that Alex has found over the years. But it won't be front line stuff, which is what we need with all the things we talked about yesterday. You're betting on the come on. That Waldrop can handle an extra load of innings. That Schwellenbach's going to be fine. That Spencer Strider is going to come back to form.
Yeah, I think innings eaters is the perfect way to put it. I think you would kill right now for a Charlie Morton, right? A guy that is probably hopefully going to make it through injury free and make it all the way to the end of the season. And we talked about it a number of times. I remember, we had Brian Snicker last year on the morning shift, and he talked about, hey, we need 13 starting pitchers to get through the year most of the time. That's insane, right? And so I think when you look at the arms you do have, when you look at Strider and Schwellenbach and Chris Sale, whatever it is, if you can stay healthy, you don't feel terrible about the rotation. But I know that it was reported the Braves were in on Edwin Diaz. Missed me with that. No, we weren't. We were never going to pay that much money. But I think that, the Kyle Finnegan thing, the Detroit kid, he signs 2 years, $19 million, I believe, back with Detroit. I do believe you would have been in on a guy like that. And you guys know as well as I do, that, Alex is going to sign a guy, and it's going to be somebody we've never heard of. And then it's going to be, hey, we really like his spin rate. The swing and miss rate is through the roof.
Curveball,
the spin rate is insane. We really, the fielder independent pitching is really, really good. And maybe we'll be surprised because we have in the past. But I don't know what to think at this point. And I'm more focused, like you said, Mike, on that shortstop position, seeing what we get done there. Because
as we know, guys, we got our catcher. Murph will eventually come back. But, we've got a guy we love who's Rookie of the Year. So, and he will, I would imagine, do some DH. We talked about Walt Weiss talking with Grant McCauley about getting Ronald Acuna to back to the number one spot. What do you guys think about Acuna back in the number one at leadoff?
I mentioned it to y'all yesterday. If we're going to start stealing bases again, for sure. If we're going to get the Ronald Acuna that's going to swipe 70, I'm all about that life. But I do think that, if you can get somebody else to fill that role, to me, Ronald does that because nobody else can fill the role. You know what I mean? Michael Harris, can't do it. Jurickson Profar, not the guy. Ozzie Albies, never going to be that guy. I think it's just out of necessity, right? You need somebody that can hit, 280 and above that's going to play that role and actually has some speed on the bases. Ronald's that guy. I would much rather him be at a 3 or 4 hole. And I'm like you, Mike, kind of old school in that thought process. But if you have nobody else that can get on and swipe bags and go first to third on a ground ball or something like that, then why not put Ronald there?
If you don't beef up 7, 8, 9, there's nobody on base for him to knock in anyway. One of the things that made us so good in 21, the bottom of the lineup was there was no weak spot. 23, there was no weak spot.
Yeah.
Even our receivers hitting in 23. Sorry, go ahead, did it.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with it, Mike. When it was perfect when 7, 8, and 9 were coming through at the plate. You're not getting that no more. So, we haven't gotten it, I'll say.
All right. We got the Christmas party. We got shenanigans. We got fun. Again, it's Archer. You're going to hear Coach Raheem Morris. And you guys, does this sound like a man who knows he's back for next year, to Day-Day's point? Also, you're going to hear Matthew Bergeron and from NFL on Fox and Fox Sports. It's Greg Allman. And where's the kid, Oren? Yesterday it was like, where's the little man?
He's in the other room right now. My mom.
Where's Ellie? There's Ellie. Say hi, Ellie. Ellie.
He's not happy right now, so we'll let him be by himself in the other room.
Yeah. But Mike, you need to get dogs and people. We have to have the cutest podcast out there. All right, man. Today, 2:00. It's Dukes and Bell with that man, Mike Johnson. Coach even asks us, why are you saying Johnson? I go, because it's fun to say Johnson. We'll talk to you today. Hump Day edition, Dukes and Bell. Tomorrow, by the way, where are we? We're on the road for a special 2-hour show with Miller Lite. Where are we at, Day-Day?
We're at Guston's in Ackworth tomorrow.
All right, that'll be Abe, so adjust the volume on your radio. But we get 48 hours out of Mike. We'll talk today at 2 on Dukes and Bell.